So it's not too often I do a two-part podcast on a goaltender because usually goalies either stop everything or stop nothing. But I think this guy deserves a two-parter because for me, he was the best player not to play for the Montreal Canadiens for the modern era. And he basically enriched the whole city and made them winners again just by using his God-given talent to build up his squad, to build up the fans. And when he was at his peak, he was probably pound for pound the best NHL athlete of his generation. Now today we're going to be talking about the big man, Bernard Marcel Parent, known to us all as Bernie Parent. Now he played 13 NHL seasons for several squads, including the Philadelphia Flyers, Boston Bruins, and Toronto Maple Leafs. And he also spent 1 year in the WHA with the Blazers. Now, according to published reports and statistical reports, he's considered one of the greatest goalies of all time. I give him top 10 for sure, maybe top 5. But for me, pound for pound, that's where it comes in because he was never a physically gifted player, but a money player in every shape or form. Now, during Philadelphia's back-to-back Stanley Cup wins between 73 and 75, he had two of what was considered the best consecutive seasons ever by a goaltender. The Flyers won the 2 Stanley Cups, of course, and he won the Vezina and Conn Smythe trophies both seasons. Now, in that 2-year run of dominance, he had 30 shutouts in regular and postseason play combined. He made the NHL Hockey Hall of Fame in 1984, and he was ranked number 63 on Hockey News on a list of top 100 NHL players, which I think is a shafting. He's definitely top 30. Now he remains a fan favorite throughout Quebec, throughout Canada, and of course throughout Philadelphia. Now, Parent came from a big family. He was born in Montreal at 5'11", 170. He grew up in the beautiful community of Rosemount, and as a kid he looked up to Jacques Plante quite a bit for obvious reasons, and that tied into his later career with the Maple Leafs, where in an ironic twist of fate they were teammates, what we'll talk about in a second. Now, Plante's sister lived in Parent's neighborhood. Now, many times Bernie would watch out for Plante's visits to his sister and her family, and Plante became a teammate and mentor in 71 when Plante was 43. Now, Bernie is well known for his, bar visits and lack of proper English in certain key situations. He was known to basically mumble in French or make certain French expression. Not as bad as the goalie on Slapshot, but you get it because most Acadians and Quebecois, when we lose control, we start speaking in fractured French and English combined and cursing. And, a lot of anecdotes are out there, but that's for another podcast. Now, he came to major prominence when playing for the Niagara Falls Flyers of the OHA Junior A League. Now, he was a 2-time winner of the Dave Pinky Trophy, which went to the lowest goals against average, or GAA, and he wrapped up his junior career on the team that won the OHA Championship and the Memorial Cup Championship in 1965. Now, this was Junior A, but it was more like a AAA process. Now, Parent began his career with Boston, even though he was undrafted, but he was a long-time affiliated prospect. He appeared in 39 games with Boston that campaign. The following year was split between Boston and a Bruins farm team in Oklahoma. Now, he was left unprotected for the 67 NHL expansion draft, and Parent was chosen by the Flyers, where he and his longtime teammate Doug Favell, who was another Bruin prospect, split the remaining duties for the Flyers for a season. Now, that campaign, he had a 2.48 goals against average with 4 shutouts, and the Flyers finished first in the West Division. Now, over the next 2 seasons, with Favell performing inconsistently or injured, Parent became the Flyers' #1 goalie and appeared in 58 and 62 games for the Flyers, achieving impressive save percentages of .925 and .921. Now, the Flyers left in a lot of shots, but are gradually getting better and better. But because the team was still struggling, not yet the Bobby Clark led squad totally, his goals against average and win totals were not nearly as impressive. Now, Philadelphia made a big mistake here, and thank God he had a chance to reverse it. Now, we're looking for help to improve the club's offense. Now, Philadelphia dealt Parent and a second-round pick in an NHL 1971 NHL amateur draft, which turned out to be Rick Keogh of all people, but that's another podcast we did recently, to the Leafs for Bruce Campbell, a veteran goalie, and a first-round selection, which was eventually the, not say mediocre, but the ineffective Pierre Plante. In the same draft, in a three-way transaction that also involved Boston on January 31st, 71, the Flyers acquired Rick McClish and Danny Schock from the Bruins, who received Mike Walton from the Maple Leafs. So it ended up being a very weird trade because Danny Schock was never a strong player. But I don't know why McClish couldn't find a role with the Bruins, probably because at the time he was considered a fourth-line player, and he wasn't Rick McClish yet. Now, the trade turned out to be a positive turn for Parent. In Toronto, he joined Jacques Plante, his hero, of course, who at 42 was having an all-star season. Now, under Plante's tutelage, Parent became a more consistent and technically proficient goalie, and he played well for the Leafs through the 72 season, gaining valuable regular season and playoff experience. But see, Parent was learning from the guy who literally wrote the goaltending book and helped refine his play. Parent's big problem was the fact that he wasn't very mobile, but when he found a way to play kind of all the angles and the strength in net, he wouldn't make a big mistake. There was an article in Sports Illustrated that said, one of the editorials says, if Parent ever learns to protect his cage, he's going to be the best goalie in the league. And sure enough, that's what happened. But it happened about 4 or 5 years afterwards. So, now, without a contract with the Leafs for the 73 season, Parent signed a larger contract with the Miami Screaming Eagles of the newly formed WHA. Now, he was the first NHL player to jump to the new league, and if you go online, you'll see a lot of photos in him in the Screaming Eagles jerseys. Now, the Eagles did not materialize as planned, and the team kind of effectively moved to Philadelphia to become the Blazers. Now, he played 63 regular season games for the Blazers in the week league. Now, after leaving the team over a contract dispute during the 73 WHA playoffs, he sought to return to the NHL, but did not wish to return to the Leafs. And here where it gets bizarre. Toronto traded Parent's NHL rights back to the Flyers for Favell, who was ineffective with Toronto, and a first-round pick in that summer's 73 amateur draft. Now, we're going to talk in part 2 about his time with the Flyers, but he was as effective in Toronto that he later became with Philadelphia. But let's look at the stats, and I just want to compare, right? In Toronto, he had these 2 seasons, he had a 2.65 average and a 2.56 average back-to-back. Although the wins were not there, second season he was under 572, it was extremely effective. Now, he did play in the playoffs, which kind of parlayed a little bit in what was needed later on. But I honestly think if Parent was with Philadelphia in 72-73 and not Doug Favell, they might have had a better chance against Montreal in the semifinals. Now, did that cost the Flyers the cup in 73? Well, the Flyers started that series very strong. Now, when he played with the Blazers, you got, ladies and gentlemen, this is totally bizarre. He was getting, I don't know how many shots per game, but the save percentage with the Blazers was quite strong, 89% on a team that was very weak, because he gave up 220 goals in 63 games. His goals per game total was through the roof. But you'll see, and when we talk in the second podcast, how he reinvented himself going back to Philadelphia. And this was the third Philadelphia team he played for, or like I said, in so many years, though it did, because the Flyers of 71 were not the Flyers of 74. Far from it. Because you have to remember, ladies and gentlemen, 1970, they had a terrible year. 71, not a good year. But by 73, they were up there because of McClish and because of, Reggie Leach. And by the way, Reggie Leach was a Bruins prospect, ended up with True California to Philadelphia. But that's another story altogether. I will be doing a Reggie Leach podcast later on, but we'll be talking more about the fact he's still one of the most underrated players of all time, in my personal opinion. Have a good evening. Bye.